Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Hi, I'm Julie Keckstein. I am a member of the CMC board. I chair the membership committee. I spend my days serving clients at PNC Wealth Management across the street. We are so happy to see everyone here. Today, our forum, From the Art the Soul, is brought to us with the support of the Puffin Foundation West, supported by Mark and Java Kittrick, and the Jeffrey Company, represented by Tad Jeffrey and Don Mykrantz, by the Crane Group, represented by Tanny and Loanne Crane, and by the Greater Columbus Arts Council with Tom Katzenmayer and Karen Bell. Please help me thank all of our sponsors and welcome the chair of the GCAC board and former Associate VP for Arts Outreach at OSU, Karen Bell, to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
What a crowd. Yay, gosh. Thank you so much, Julie. It's my pleasure to represent the Greater Columbus Arts Council and our Tom Katzenmayer and all of our partners as we support the mission of the Columbus Metropolitan Club to engage in these interesting, fascinating conversations. Today, we are so lucky that we have the rare opportunity to hear the personal stories of one of our most famous and foremost artists. Her work echoes times and place, humanity, history, and deep spiritual connection of the body and soul. In vivid color, so many of us have seen Aminah's work with the vivid color, expressive texture, raw materials and found objects. Love those buttons. Aminah weaves intricate stories of people and place into her art. It's my honor and profound privilege to welcome internationally acclaimed artist and friend, Aminah Robinson. And Denny. We are equally blessed to recognize Denny, another gifted artist, and might I add, very happy in retirement and making tremendous new art. And here he is, having a conversation, a historic conversation with Aminah. We're so pleased to have you both here today. We also know Denny as the former and beloved, well, I guess one of the past presidents and leaders of Columbus College of Art and Design. So here they are, Denny Griffith and Aminah Robinson. Take it away.
So Aminah and I decided that we really didn't want to talk about art today, so we thought we'd just break down the Wisconsin-Duke game for you. Is that all right?
That's right.
And then we realized neither one of us had a clue what really happened there. So it's a little sad that nobody likes you and nobody wanted to hear you talk, Aminah. I mean, look at this place. It's amazing. There's a whole bunch of people sitting in Chillicothe watching this right now, probably.
But there are spirits.
There are spirits.
And I know two.
Yeah?
Real ones.
Those
and that's
would be?
you and Beth.
Oh, yeah, Beth is
Yep.
here. Yep. Hi, honey.
Beautiful spirit.
So, I mean, just to get started, you know, when you were a little girl and you were making your work, could you ever imagine that someday later in your life you'd be sitting in a room, you know, with an enormous crowd of well-wishers that all just wanted to hear about how you make stuff?
No. And the only reason why I had to do what I did is because of my father. I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk.
Until you were, what?
5 or 6.
But your dad, how did your dad coax it out of you? I mean, what did he do to help support you?
Every morning when we had breakfast, he would teach me how to look at my surroundings, not a particular thing or person, but the whole surrounding of where I was, and that was right there in Poindexter Village. So my father said, "Tell me, Bryn, what do you see?" No, I love to take out my notebook and begin to draw. So I would draw it, and I'm still trying to speak. So don't take it too seriously.
So that was really your language then. I mean, your language from the time that you can remember was somehow recording the world around you and using that to sort of interpret your feelings and communicate with your family?
Yes, and Poindexter people.
And then what was, because I've heard you talk about your father, and I've also heard you talk about your Uncle Alvin as another big influence. What's the kind of the background story there?
There were three.
Three?
Yes, and it takes so long because their lives, my uncle and my great aunt, but my father died at 61. So he was young.
How old were you when he passed, Aminah?
I was 39,
Okay.
you know.
So you were an adult, yeah.
I was an adult. I had just gotten back from Africa. And that was in September, and he asked me, "What did you see? What did you smell? What was the difference? What was the sun like?" So I take out my notebook. But I could speak, but I still took out my notebook and began to draw.
That's
So
great.
we were there for the 12 hours. And the following month, he made his transition, and he said, "I'll be okay." And I believed him.
Yeah. So how did that trip to Africa come about?
Kojo and Marianne from OSU, they decided that there should be other artists besides them to go to Africa. And they chose 4 people, but only one went at a time. So I didn't know. They didn't tell me what to do or what to wear. I just didn't know.
So what part of Africa did you go to?
Went across the county. Went from Senegal to Egypt. It changed my life
Yeah, tell me.
because it showed me a lot of things that I was doing at home, that my father and my great aunt, they were doing there.
So you could find, in a sense, your own history through the history of the other people that you were interacting with? Is that?
Yes. Made a lot of friends.
Yeah?
Yes.
Isn't that where you got, you were given this extra name that we all know you by now?
Yes. There was a holy man in Egypt. He says, "Your name is Aminah." I said, "Oh, okay." So what I did, I told my father. I said, "They gave me another name." He said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "Aminah." That's what they said. That's what this holy man said. So I went on and listened to my father. And he said, "Do you know what your grandmother's middle name is?" I said, "No, I know her first name is Pearlie. That's his mother. Pearlie Aminah."
Wow.
And my auntie, her middle name is Aminah. And there's a daughter, her daughter, who is close to my age. Not really, but you know, around that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that.
Her middle name is Aminah.
Wow.
And then there are great children whose middle name is Aminah. So when I found that out, I made it legal. I didn't change anything that my parents gave me.
Just
I
added
just
it on.
added on. But it's legal.
It's important.
It's very important.
So back to Poindexter Village. You know, your work has conveyed volumes about that, the kind of incubator that place was in the community for you and your family. But you've also made the stories of Poindexter Village, as well as, you know, a ton of other stories. We could talk about the Sells family and the circus, and I learned about that through you and your work. But Poindexter Village occupied a really kind of key place in your life and in the life of the community. Can you just say a little bit about verbally, what it was like growing up there and the way it ties into your work?
Yes, it ties into my work through my parents, because they were born, raised, and educated in the blackberry patch. And I have always seen the blackberry patch in Poindexter Village one phase, even though they got rid of it. And now Poindexter, it doesn't matter. You know, I love change. I absolutely love change. But you've got to have some knowledge and try to study. You just have to study the place that you grew up so you can share it and all that came before.
So what's your study methodology? When you talk about doing that study, and we know it feeds into your work because of the incredible array of things that, you know, that show up in your work, the people, you know, you get to know all these characters like the brownie skinned man and the umbrella fixing man and all those people. But how did you do the homework to figure all that stuff? Other than, of course, I mean, some of it you saw yourself, right?
Some of it, most of it, came from the blackberry patch, from my uncle. My Uncle Alvin.
Okay.
He handed down all of these blackberry patch stories. He knew them because he lived it.
And the blackberry patch and Poindexter Village, these are like sort of neighbors? Or, I mean, these were like neighborhoods that were sort of next to each other? Were they like one thing grew out of the other? I've never been really clear about that.
Well, the blackberry patch was leveled.
Okay.
In order to build the
okay.
first metropolitan housing development
All right.
in the country.
So
that was Poindexter Village.
Was the wellspring for all that.
1940.
And didn't Roosevelt come to Columbus?
He did. He came to Poindexter, but he also went all over Columbus, but he didn't forget Poindexter.
So, so you had the Africa trip, which you said really changed you, and then there's this Italian boyfriend that you told me about one time.
Leonardo. I love Leonardo.
So talk to us a little bit about Leonardo and how's it going with that boyfriend?
Oh, he's coming along. He'll be here forever when I'm gone. Leonardo was given to me by my father. You know, my father worked in the Columbus Public Schools as a janitor. He also worked full-time at St. Thomas. So he worked those two and then two others as gardeners. Someone knew, or he told a teacher, that I loved art. That teacher gave him a book of Leonardo. I was 12.
Wow.
And my father gave me the book. And I just fell in love with this manuscript pages. And that's why I do manuscript. He's been a mentor. I mean, he's absolutely great. I mean, he's a master, like you.
I wish.
Oh, you are.
Well, so, and actually that raises, the term manuscript is important, and it raises one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which has to do, I mean, that your explanation helps me already, but you've got this relationship with books, and you still make books. I mean, entire works of art that are books themselves. Beth and I are very happy to have some of your work in one of the sculptures. There are these little baby books that are in there that are kind of worked into the whole thing. And then you've also had numerous books and catalogs on your work published. So there's this whole kind of love affair relationship with the written word and the visuals that accompany those. Could you talk to us a little bit about that relationship? And maybe it sounds like it started with Leonardo da Vinci.
Yes, it did. When my father gave me, I just went into my studio at 12. And you know where that was? Under the bed. So that was my first studio.
That's great.
And I just loved his manuscript pages, the drawings, and I just fell in love with his work and appreciate him.
Well, narrative is such an important part of your work. And everything you do has stories embedded in it that are about distinctive communities, like you've just explained. The blackberry patch leading to Poindexter Village, and then, you've researched. I can remember work you did about the E.E. Ward Moving Company, which is, I think, the oldest African American owned business.
Storage.
Yeah,
Company.
And so there's always been this kind of deep relationship for you that I find between storytelling in your work and the kind of narrative that goes on behind it, and then these books that are embedded in it, and so it all seems like it's of a piece. Is that like a strategic part of your work, or is it just a natural part of the way you see the world?
I would say it's a natural way in which I walk into the world, because I love to take walks. And when the journeys came along, which were given to me as a gift by my community, I didn't just go to Chile or go to Israel. These are gifts that I do not take for granted. And so every journey is a gift. And those gifts will be returned to my community. And that's a fact.
So that raises another interesting point. You have this rich relationship with the Columbus Museum of Art.
Yes.
And you just made reference to the fact that they will return to the community. So tell us a little bit more about what's behind that statement.
They took me in as a part of their exhibition. I was 16 years old, 1956. I just do humble works, I live a humble life. But they saw something in my work. 1956. And I will never forget that. Never.
And so,
I will.
So your impulse then, as I've known you, is to find ways to give back to the community.
Yes, I try.
I think you succeed. So what's going to happen? I mean, when you think about this relationship with the Art Museum, and I know that they've collected a fair amount of your work.
Yes, and I've given a lot.
Yeah.
Everything in that catalog. It can't come back home Because
There's no room.
room.
I wonder how they got some of that work out of there in the first place.
I don't know. I really don't know.
I think of that big throne out of there that you had, that big chair that was in the front
It's,
room.
that's a community chair. That belongs to the
Yeah.
museum for the people. Everything I give is for the people of this community because they have given to me to have a life. You know, I have a life. So I'm happy about that because I find so much joy in the work that I do. I have a life.
Well, you've given joy to so many of us in the room who have the privilege to live with, you know, a piece or two or more of your work. You know, and you go to the public library. I mean, you think about all the places around town where your work can be seen, and not just around town. You know,
But I worked at the library. That's my first job.
I had forgotten that.
58. 58. Started working there in 58.
So it all comes full circle, doesn't it?
Full circle. I wonder what I've been doing. That's a long time.
Well, so maybe a kind of a last question, and then I know people here have, you know, things that they want to ask you. So rather than keeping the privilege to myself, we'll share that. But could you just talk a little bit about the way you work? Because I think one of the most stunning things to me is just how much time and energy goes into this kind of constant act of creativity that's your life.
You mean after I dig?
Well, after you dig?
I have to dig for stuff.
Yeah, no
Everything
kidding.
is layered.
Yeah.
You can't just come in and throw out a bunch of papers.
There is
because there's maybe a writing on here, maybe a manuscript page I've been working on for 15 years. You know, I must give my best. I must. And I hope our young people will catch it. Well, at least catch that.
Well,
But
your work ethic is extraordinary. I mean, you don't, when you get up in the morning,
4.
4 in the morning, and you probably, I was going to make a joke and say you probably
Go ahead.
Head out to Starbucks, you know, and have some coffee.
No.
So you get up at 4 in the morning, and then tell us about your day.
4 o'clock in the morning, off the couch, sweet roll, and coffee, hot coffee. And I go from one room to another, working, and that includes upstairs and outside. And outside in
your other studio out back.
yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Yeah. For those of you that have not had the privilege of being in Aminah's home, it truly is extraordinary. There are sedimentary layers of work that go back years and years and years, and you can turn on the one hand and she's painting on fabric, or she's drawing, sketching. There are pieces of sculpture in her kitchen that you have to dance around just to get from one room to the next. There's the dog.
Baby.
I was in New York. I had a studio in the late 80s when Aminah was at PS1.
PS1.
And she came down to do a studio visit one day. She took the subway over and came down into Tribeca, where I had the studio that I shared with some people. And she hit her coat all up like this. And inside she had 2 things. She had Boo Boo, her chihuahua, and a knife. So, you know.
I was scared. Everybody said, you better be careful.
Yeah, well.
But
When I saw you, I was
had no
scared.
problem.
Yeah, nobody's going to mess with Aminah. Just one last comment. You talk about giving back, but you know, you've also for many years had a relationship that I just have to mention with our good friend Marlena Keynes and Hammond Harkin Galleries.
Yes.
Could you just talk a little bit about, because that's, you know, a community needs both the nonprofit sector to support artists and the for-profit sector who can help, frankly, place the work.
Yes, and it's more than just having exhibitions. They do my marketing for me so I can continue on doing my work. When I don't feel well, they go to the pharmacy.
Isn't that amazing?
It's a different kind of walk with them. And that goes back to, Lancaster. You know, and of course, that's because of you. And yes, you pointed.
You know, they gave us a cocktail table up here, but there's no cocktails on it.
I don't drink cocktails.
Yeah, I know you don't. So let's open it up to you all. So there's a little phrase that I'm supposed to read here, which I guess is the signal to unlock the microphones. It's CMC's tradition to take audience questions. Please step to the microphone, give us your name, and ask your question. And thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments. We will cut you off. So we'd love to have some questions from the audience. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Hurd, and that's my Aunt Brenda / Aunt Aminah.
Hi, baby.
When we were young, we said, "What does Aminah mean?" I just wanted to thank everyone, thank actually Hammond Harkins for allowing me to be present here today. And Aunt Aminah, every time I go somewhere, so many people mention how much you've impacted their artwork, especially artists, and you've mentored them even if you don't know them. And I just wanted you to speak even on when you worked for Parks and Recs and some things that you've done for young artists that people may not know about, how you've contributed to the community that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I didn't hear the question.
She wanted to know about your impact on younger artists and the way that you've kind of mentored people just as you were mentored.
Well,
and specifically about the Recreation and Parks period, but beyond that.
Well, I'm hoping that they will catch something of a sketchbook, because that is the first thing I ask. Where is your sketchbook? You're already an artist. You should carry your sketchbook everywhere. If they have it, that is wonderful. If they don't have it, well, I asked again and again and again. And then if they don't have it, then I'd let them be, because maybe there's not that interest.
I heard you had a special stick to whack them with.
No, I wish, but I can't. You're going to draw.
But you know, your work ethic, I mean, you get up off that couch in the morning, you work all day long, you work up until, what did you say, 11 o'clock at night?
10, 11,
10, 11,
10:30,
and then
11.
you know, you go on the couch in your living room for a little while, and then you get up and go back at it again.
Yes, but I sing to my great aunt.
Yes?
Yes.
Same song?
No, I love change. I really love change. That's how the world is moved, by all of the people in this world.
People that contribute to change.
Yes, my great aunt, Themba,
Does she sing back?
her spirit.
I thought maybe so. That's neat. I see we have another question.
Yes, hi, thank you so much for being here today, both of you. This question actually comes from our folks out at Easton, and this is a student, David Block from the Columbus Academy, kind of related to the last question. He asks, for both of you, how would you encourage high school students to achieve greater personal expression in their work?
Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard that. By drawing. Do they have a sketchbook on them? You got to draw. You got to have that sketchbook. I don't care what you do. Even when you were, before you retired, you know, some of your students came to my house.
You bet.
And before I could get it out, they all brought out their sketchbooks. So I know you told them,
Yeah.
but it was filled. And I said, well, this is okay.
I told him about that stick you had. Yeah.
Also, the technology. Oh, I'm going to learn the technology in about 5 years.
Yeah? You got other things to do in the meantime, right?
Oh, I have to do my work.
Yeah. So I would add to that, to Aminah's question, I think the process, certainly having the sketchbook and drawing is a really critical aspect, but also an artist's job is to become fully and deeply acquainted with the world around them, and then to finally filter that back through the lens of their own personal experience. You've got to become completely and utterly yourself, which is not something that a high school student can do, or even a college student. It's a life's journey to understand who you are as a person and what your relationship is to the world around you, and then to make things that are distinctive and powerful, that are kind of seen through the lens or the filter of that individual's point of view. So it's a combination of, having a love affair with the practice, which is really what you're talking about with the sketchbook, and then becoming acquainted with who you are as a person and the world around you in ways that enable you to say something with the skills that you've got. I think we have another question.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much. Love you, Aminah. Love you, Denny. Thank you.
you.
My name is Javon Collins. I'm the program director at the King Arts Complex. And Aminah, just wanted to ask, as you were growing up in Poindexter Village, there was a great well of artists. I heard that Elijah Pierce was one of your mentors. So if you could briefly talk about that experience of having so many great artists in your neighborhood, and also your vision for the future of the arts here in Columbus, Ohio.
Great question.
Thank you.
It's great. Elijah Pierce lived one street down from where you and I lived. You on Wellamont, I'm on Sunbury, Elijah Pierce on Margaret. We would take morning walks every morning, just about. He and Mrs. Pierce. And they would talk about the life around us. And then he would take a bus and go to the barber shop. He had a great effect on every person he met. Everyone wanted to be a part of his woodcuts. Masterpieces, like the Prince of Denny Griffith. He's making masterpieces.
I'm going to follow you around.
It's true. Mr. Pierce, Roman Johnson, Pepper Johnson, David Barker.
Yeah.
I can go on and on. Everyone in this community were artists. And I would even go far to say that everyone is an artist, if they want to do it. And age has nothing to do with it. You can start at any age. If you want it, you just start. Well, how do you start? We don't have any materials. Well, here's some pencils and paper, but there's also some cans, paper cups. You can do, and look at all that wood out there, and leaves, and just different stuff. Create anything, everything, out of nothing.
Thank you.
And that's what the artists did in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had hundreds of artists, hundreds. I have a whole list. I mean, coming out of this community, they're the roots.
A lot of them are here today.
Yes, yes.
Hello, Ron.
Hello, Ron Green from Ohio State. Hi, Aminah, Denny.
Hi.
We've heard about all these people you've learned from, like Elijah and from your dad and your uncle and all these other people. But I often hear you mention CCAD, and I wonder, and that's like a formal education. And I'm wondering how you got into it, what you thought of it, what that gave you that was important or not, whatever. What was that like?
What did you learn from CCAD?
I learned everything from CCAD. I learned discipline. That's why I am disciplined. But most of all, I started early. Saturday morning classes. My parents went to a parent exhibit at Franklin. I guess I was in the 8th grade, 9th. And Mr. Duran, the art teacher, told my parents she should go to art school. And they put me in art school with a scholarship and went on to their professional. I had great teachers. Every one was a master. Kanzani, you had to work. You had to work. See, our young people don't understand that they have to work. How are you going to grow? How are you going to know? Because some things are not given verbally. You have to work. And I think that's an understanding that is not understood by our young people. But they do believe in technology. It needs to be a blend.
Thanks.
Great questions, everybody. Thank you for these.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Engel. I'm with the Ohio History Connection. And I have written a play, and I've been working on it for 10 years, and I hear that, you know, your environment at your house, it sounds like you're working on multiple projects. And I was wondering, how do you know when you're done? Because I've been, you know, please tell me. Thank you.
You're never done, especially the Raganons. Raganons take years, and they're to be given to institutions, which is all of the ones that I have, except for a couple of them, maybe 3, 4, are still in the house, and I call that my studio. There are studios all over, but I have to dig for stuff because I can't find it. Everything is layered.
But help the audience understand what a Raganon is.
A Raganon goes on, and it catches the millennium. And hopefully, it will not only blend their ideas, but also catch the technology that has been given to them through their teachers and community.
So with Aminah's work, these Raganons are often, you know, fabric-based, but they have, you know, stitchery, they have buttons, they have paint, they have drawing, and she stitches them together in sequence. And so you've got this one project, I mean, the one big Raganon that's in your living room, and you've been working on that for
58.
Since 1958.
I was a second-year student. And I had a good, wonderful professor, John Rush, who taught us how to, here's some burlap. He gave us burlap. Go make a skirt. This is 58. Go make something. So that's what I did. I not only made a skirt, but I started these rag-a-nons. Here's some wood. Make your tools. Make your own tools. Walnut, scraps of walnut. Make your beautiful tools. So he gave us a freedom to live within the work and to see possibilities.
Very wise. I would add to that, it is possible, in my own personal experience, to overwork things. And so sometimes it's helpful to set a project aside and start another project. And then you come back to your original one with fresh eyes. So sometimes it's tempting to try. Now, your particular methodology is such that because it's storytelling and it goes on and on.
In chapters.
In chapters. So there's a way that Aminah's worked this out. But I do think you can load up an individual work of art sometimes with too many different ideas, and it starts to collapse of its own weight. So it's helpful to maybe start something else or give yourself a breather and come back to it afresh.
Thank you.
Hi, Andy Campbell. I have my own question this time. I'm really curious. I'm struck in observing and looking at your work that I seem to hear things. They're telling, you can hear the stories almost. And I'm really interested in your process when you're identifying, especially maybe found objects, what things capture you and what do you hear from these things that become a larger story?
Well, when everything is clean, when I first go in there, it's clean and it's not all messed up. And then everything else leaves because you got to work. And the work encourages an artist to use his surroundings. Now, that's what I learned in art school. You use your surroundings. And all of the artists I know coming up in Poindexter, Elijah Pierce, Smokey Brown, Roman Johnson, and I can go on and on and on. We use our surroundings, but we move out of that space because there's no more room to put anything. So I say, well, now what am I going to do? I can't make another little place outside because they won't let me. There's already too much out there. So I just continue work. It's layered. And it's in chapters.
That says it. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. I'm Jane Scott with Metropolitan Club. I always love to ask this question. In all of our lives, there are moments that you stop and there's a snapshot in your head that you're never going to forget that moment. I'd like to hear some of your defining moments. Your defining moments when you stop in place and you look around and you go, this is a memory, this is a time, this is a person that is going to stay with me forever. I'd like to hear some of your defining moments.
First of all, thank you for seeing something in my humble works. Thank you. And that means you see something in my family, the elders of my family, elders of my community, and all the people that I've had the privilege to meet and know. All of that goes into the work. It's a part of the work. You can't separate that community from the work because the work is about the community. Now, whether people understand it or like it, it's neither here nor there. I always say, well, maybe some of our millenniums will understand. Because after all, they're about technology. And I love it because it's changed.
So, last question, and then I see our presiding officer is on her way up here. You talked about loving change, embracing change. Mm-hmm. Is there something that springs to mind that you would most like to see change in our community?
It's been transformative. I mean, I know there are, a lot of people kind of bicker about stuff. But that too will pass. But what will stay will be the work that they've done. That's what's going to stay. And work with our young people. And that's all that matters. You do all this work for our young people. And you don't know who will be inspired to go on and give, not only to their community, but to everyone they meet. Even if people think they're crazy.
You've been magnificent. Magnificent.
Thank you.
So good.
Remarkable oral history. You'll remember where you were listening to this. Sure you enjoyed today's forum. We can continue the conversation with coffee and cookies out in the lobby. Remember, you can view and share the forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates on the Ohio channel, and then anytime on our website or download our app via YouTube. Let's thank our sponsors, GCAC, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, Puffin Foundation West, the Jeffrey Company, and the Crane Company, and our treasures of our community. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed today.